Greetings, Aquaba. Welcome. Happy Sunday. I hope you all are well. I hope you are reaching your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual strength. And if you're not there, you're rapidly approaching it. And we want to thank you for joining this Our Ancestors Voices program. This is our 170th, 170 episode. And today we're going to be talking about the Beyond TikTok, a revolutionary Pan-Africanist perspective of the Montgomery boat dock fight that happened a couple of weeks ago. And this program is sponsored each week, same time, same place, by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So we're glad that you are here to join us for this topic. We give thanks and honor to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, the rightful caretakers of this land. And with that, we always respect that. We always respect our hosts. And so we honor them and give them all the support we can muster for their fight to get their land back, because these lands unquestionably belong to them. I don't care how much confusion comes across on social media. Once you steal something from somebody, it remains theirs, no matter how long it's stolen. So this is their land, and they are fighting for it to get it back. And we stand shoulder to shoulder with them in that regard. And we also want to acknowledge our African ancestors, of course, our African ancestors who are the reason that we're here. The only reason that we're here is our African ancestors. So we always honor them everywhere in the world that they existed, and their struggle to give us sustenance and to sustain us so that we could continue to fight to bring glory and liberation to our people and to the entire planet Earth. So we're thankful to our ancestors for that. And with that, we will go ahead and start our introductions for the program. And we will just say that we have a number of ways that you can donate to the All African People's Revolutionary Party: Cash App at AAPRP, Venmo at AAPRP, PayPal at AAPRP. We are planning our International Pan-African Women's Day program. It's coming up this next weekend, so we encourage you to donate. We have a number of expenses that are related to this program. Because it's international, we have translation. Translation is not cheap. We are not a US-based organization, so we translate in 4 or 5 languages every event that we do in that realm. So whatever contribution you can make to help us to spread that is appreciated. Pan-African Women's Day is a very critical institution within the All African People's Revolutionary Party. It's designed to uplift the struggle of women and marginalized gender people against the patriarchal system, which is the right-hand appendage of the capitalist system. So help us, please, in that regard. And Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP. AAPRP is a revolutionary, independent, mass Pan-African political party that is based in Africa. Our objective is Pan-Africanism, and the correct definition of Pan-Africanism is the total liberation and unification of Africa under a continental scientific socialist government. That is our objective. And we feel that that objective, once achieved, will bring about all of the resources and organization we need as a people to address our problems, no matter where we live, scattered in 120 countries worldwide, 2.5 billion of us. And we have a strategy to achieve Pan-Africanism. We're not just putting a stick out in the dark. The strategy is in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, which you see the cover on the page if you're looking at our screen. And in that book, Nkrumah outlines that the way to achieve Pan-Africanism is to unite all of the revolutionary Pan-African formations on the ground who agree with the definition of one unified socialist Africa. And there are some of the logos of some of those organizations that we work with on a consistent basis, and there are many others. And so we are doing this work to unite all of these entities into the All African Committee for Political Coordination that we see as the body that will guide us towards Pan-Africanism. And Our Ancestors' Voices is hosted each week by AAPRP organizers, myself, Ajamu, and my biological and ideological daughter, Shakura. both of us active members in the party. And so to get us started today on the topic, a revolutionary Pan-Africanist perspective on the Montgomery boat dock fight a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you, kind sir. Appreciate you. And I echo what my dad was saying. I hope that each and every one of you is able to achieve whatever your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual health, whatever that may look like. I know that capitalism is a tough system, and I know that sometimes there are days where things can be a little bit harder than others. But this is why, if you are an organizer, this is why you have to use your application, your theory, and your practice. This is why you have to use it to stay motivated, because the system is so rough. It will do anything to terminate the work that we're doing. And more importantly, it'll do anything to terminate our spirits. And so this is why we have to join an organization that is working for justice, so that we can find a vessel to help us navigate and resist and deal with the same system that is so powerful is stopping at nothing to take us down. If you're not in an organization that's working for justice, we strongly recommend you join one, because I'm not really sure, if I weren't in an organization that was working for justice, I'm not really sure how I would be navigating all the trials and tribulations that I have to navigate through as a African cis woman who is differently abled. I'm not really sure how I would navigate that. And I probably would select some behaviors that are fairly risky and probably not very safe, for lack of a better term, because you need something to just deal with everything that's happening. And so we do recommend that you join an organization working for justice, so that you can figure out a way to think more collectively, and that you can figure out a way to start working with other people. And more importantly, so that you can enhance your political education, because a lot of us are not increasing our knowledge. We really don't know the history and the herstories and the theirstories of anything, especially our own people. And so it's causing us to not really be as prepared as we could be to then fight to resist these same oppressions that we're facing today, that we were facing 500 years ago. So we want you to join an organization that's working for justice, so that you can learn how to think collectively, you can work with other people and learn how to do that, and so you can increase your political education. But we also think you should join an organization that's working for justice, because you need a healthy vessel to deal with all the BS that exists in the world. You need a healthy vessel to do that. You don't need to just sit in your house and feel like you're alone, even though you know that there's a problem and you know something needs to be done. You don't need to feel like you're not enough. You don't need to feel like you don't have what it takes to deal with these problems. And if you were in an organization that was working for justice, then you would be centered around so many other people, surrounded, I should say, not centered, because that's individualistic. You would be surrounded with other people who are also figuring out how to navigate this stupid system every single day. And you can share information with them. You can share experiences. You can talk about how stupid capitalism is. You can talk about that with other people who get it, because they too are in organizations that are working for justice. So they too understand that this system is so dumb. It is so dumb to not value humanity over profit. That is the dumbest choice anyone could ever make. And we know that that's simply not sufficient, and it is not going to do well. So we have to figure out a way to support one another. This is why we say, even if you choose not to join our organization, we still ask that you join an organization that is working for justice, because we just need you to be organizing with someone where you understand that you need to work on changing the conditions, so that justice-loving people everywhere can benefit from your sacrifice, and vice versa. And so with that, consider it, because things are only getting more difficult, you all. And capitalism is working overtime. So if you have not joined an organization by now, I strongly recommend you reevaluate that choice. With that being said, though, let's jump more into this topic today and continue to talk about why organizing is going to be key in helping us to understand not just the Montgomery brawl, but brawls that are happening right now, brawls that are about to happen next week, and brawls that even happened 400 and 500 years ago that we're still unpacking today. And so again, like, we have to erase this rhetoric that Africans did not fight back. We have to erase this rhetoric that Africans or Black people were not strong and we just took the disrespect. We just took the inhumanity. We just took the violence and the rhetorical violence. We just accepted all of those treatments and we did nothing to fight back. That was never, ever, ever based on truth. And it's very dangerous to go around spewing lies that are not true when you don't have political education. Because if you lack political education and you spew these lies to other people who also lack political education, then now we have two ignorant people sharing ignorant conversations that are not based on truth, that are not based on reality, and that are not based on principle. So now we're just sharing false information and promoting it and sharing it and disputing it and disseminating it, which means we're literally injecting a virus, if you will, a false ideological virus. Yes, we're injecting that into our humanity, into our communities, into our neighborhoods, into the people that we know, which means we're no better than capitalism and capitalist people because they're spewing lies, they're spewing mistruths, and they're okay with it. So I think we need to come to this understanding that that was never based on truth. The only reason they said that was because they needed to control the narrative of who we are as a people. And it was easier for them to say, we are not a strong people, because then that takes away the threat of what we bring to the table, because it's not okay for people to know who we really are. Because if people really knew who we are, they would understand that you should not be choosing to disrespect any colonized person at this point, but especially not a person who descends from Africa, because we are past fed up. And we were fed up when you stole us and kidnapped us from our continent. We have been fed up since that moment. You know how I know we were fed up? Because when I was 4 years old and when I was 16, I was humbly blessed with the opportunity to go home. Not America, people, because that's not my home. If you are indigenous, then yes, that is your home. But I am not indigenous. I am African. And I understand that my home is Mother Africa. So when I was 4 and 16, I had the opportunity to go home. I first went to Ghana when I was 4. And when I was 16, I went to Senegal. And I don't really remember going to the slave castles when I was 4. But as a 16-year-old, I remember feeling the wall as you walk out and voyage into the low side of the sea, where the ocean meets the sand. And I remembered feeling the rigid marks against the wall, because I know that my ancestors were literally fighting to the point where they were digging their fingers into the concrete. Y'all are not hearing me. Y'all are asleep right now. You're not hearing me. You're not hearing me. There is no way that a human could take their biological fingernails and put a mark into a concrete wall, but we did it because we knew that it was wrong what they were doing. And we didn't just damage the wall, we damaged them. We damaged the people trying to cake us. We damaged the people trying to kidnap us. We made them wish they had not woke up that morning to want to kidnap us, because they had no idea what they were in for. They had no idea. I think about that all the way from the Horn of Africa through Central, North, and South Africa, all the way down to the Gulf of Guinea, and even to the Bakongo region. I think about it as far as them going back to kidnap us, and I think about our ancestors who were strategic in figuring out ways for us to escape on all the many slave revolts that we had and the slave escapes that we had. The organization, the sacrifice, the planning that went into these slave revolts, planning them, and allowing the master to understand we are not going to do what you're asking us to do because we don't need to be here. We're not supposed to be here. You took us from our home and now you're making us work, and we're not doing it anymore. We're not doing it anymore. And we never really did it, but we were always trying to figure out a way to organize ourselves so that we could be stronger in numbers to make your life a living you know what. And that's what those slave revolts represented. Because remember, slavery was an economic system, okay? It was never about being humane to people. That's why you need to study your research and increase your political education, because if you did that, then you would know that Lincoln didn't end slavery because he cared about humanity. He ended it because it wasn't economically feasible because of industrialization and the usage of machines being able to pick cotton at a much faster frequency and rate than a human could do in any time. So we have to do our research, you all. This is why political education matters. But back to the subject at hand. So if you really understood the purpose of slavery, then you would understand that it wasn't a humane system. It was a system based on making money, because capitalism is that system. And so when we think about that in more context, we need to understand that that means that we were resisting from the moment they tried to take us from the continent to the moment they dropped us off. Remember, a lot of our people did not even want to risk getting to whatever the ship was headed for. They didn't want to wait to get to the port. So a lot of us jumped jumped overboard. We did what we had to do. Some of us took our own lives on the ship. We didn't even jump overboard. Some of us asked one another to take our lives because we didn't want to deal with it. Those of us who were carrying children, we figured out a way to sacrifice our children so that they didn't have to grow up in a life like that. Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. We figured out ways to do that, you all. We were always resisting. We were always fighting. We were always fighting. Never forget that. We were always fighting. I think about my comrades who were brutally raped by these sick European I really want to say a word, but I'm not going to say it, by these sick European men. And I just think about how even that was strategic, because everything is political. So even being raped can be considered political, because for some of us, we understood that if we were able to lower their inhibitions just enough for them to be focused on achieving what they needed to achieve from a violation standpoint, then that's when we could figure out how to take them over. That's when we could figure out how to have someone come up from behind and knock them the heck out. That's when we could figure out how to steal the keys so that we could unlock the shackles, both ideologically and physically. And that's how we could figure out how to escape. I think about how we were so smart. We understood that if we saturated sheets and quilts and submerged them in water, and then we hung them up, it would drown out our scents and our sounds. So we would have meetings in the woods about how we would escape, and there would be saturated sheets encompassing us and circulating around us, and it was harder for the dogs to sniff us out. It was harder for the plantation masters and the overseers to find us, because the saturated blanket made it harder for our voices to carry over. Y'all not hearing me right now. You're not hearing me. We didn't tolerate this just standing up, is what I'm trying to say. It was never like that. We were fighting from the moment they came over there. We were fighting before the slave ships got there, because we knew they had no business being over there, and we knew we needed to take back our land, and we are fighting today. That's what people in Haiti are doing right now. Haiti, however you pronounce it. That's what they're doing right now. That's what the people in parts of Africa are doing right now. We are fed up, and we're starting to join forces, because we're not just fighting for some of the older problems that we're facing. Some of us are now recruiting new people to help us fight against anti-homophobic laws. And some of us are recruiting people to fight against anti-ableist laws. Some of us are recruiting to fight against laws where we understand that polygamy is simply not okay, and we can't tolerate it anymore. We're understanding that we need to fight against gender-based violence. We're understanding that we need to fight against gender-based mutilization. We are understanding, you all, that we do not have to tolerate these systems of oppression anymore. And we are standing up, and we are not going to take it sitting down. We are not going to take it sitting down. And most importantly, we understand that if we can organize more and more and more of us to push against it, then it's going to be so much harder for that system to continue. Next slide, please. So we think about this in a lot of context, and we start to really understand what this means and how we think about it, right? So we can think about how the only way we've been able to do anything is with organized struggle. Okay, so I think about our comrades from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. I think about our comrades in the Black Panther Party. I think about our comrades in AZAPO, our organization, our sibling organization in Azania, or what the colonized term would be of South Africa today, and the work that they're doing. Of course, I have to give a shout out to my comrade Theodora Gomes and the work that the PAIGC was doing to help fight against the Portuguese when they were resisting colonization with that. in Guinea-Bissau, right, Daddy? I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong. I'm also thinking about other comrades and work that they have been doing, some that we know about and some that didn't even get a chance to leave their mark because they were killed before they even had a chance for their story to be told. My point is, it's always been based on joining an organization that works for justice that this resistance can take place, you all. Because individually, we all know that there is a problem with what's happening. Individually, we all know that Africans are under attack everywhere. We're not just centering Africans in America who are under attack, because we understand, as I just pointed out, that Africans in Haiti or Haiti are under attack too. We understand that Africans in other parts of the world are under attack. We understand that Africans are under attack in Canada. We understand that Africans are under attack in Jamaica. Africans are under attack in parts of Miami and parts of the European countries. We understand these things. So if that is truly the case, then the only way to address it is to do what? To join an organization that is working for justice. And if you're just now joining today's seminar, that might be the first time that you have heard that. So let me try my best to iron it out in the short time that I have left before I pass the slides back to my dad. The whole reason that our organization is asking you to join an organization is because we as organizers understand that all that we have done has allowed us to get to the place we are now. And when I say we, yes, I mean the All African People's Revolutionary Party, but I also mean the American Indian Movement. I also mean the Palestinian Liberation Organization. I also mean AZAPO. I also mean the Pan-African Independent Party for Guinea-Bissau. I could go on and on and on. The point is, every single one of these organizations has done a remarkable job to terminate oppression for all people, specifically colonized people, and specifically colonized people who are poor. So if you are joining an organization that's working for justice, you have a better chance of changing the systems that we live in. Because if there are more of us organizing against it, you know what that means? That means there's going to be less people that we still have to convince that this way is simply not good enough. If there are less people protecting the current system of oppression, then we have a greater chance of taking that system down. Now, if you are an Uncle Tom or a house slave and you're more interested in protecting the current system of oppression, that's fine too, and you can make your choice, but you're not going to stop us. So to me, you'd be better off just joining us, because we're not going to let you stop us. This system of oppression is not working for the overwhelming majority of us. And so I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. And I know other people with the All African People's Revolutionary Party are going to do everything they can to stop it. The same thing with the American Indian Movement, the same thing with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the same thing with the ZAPO, the same thing with PAIGC, on and on and on. The beat don't stop until the break of dawn. You already know. So again, you either join us and understand that you have a responsibility to terminate these systems of oppression with us or with another organization that happens to work for justice, or you can get in our way, but it's not going to look good for you, because we're not going to tolerate you protecting this system that is currently oppressing all of us, including you. We're going to struggle with you. We're going to struggle with you and help you see the value of what you're doing in terms of making things worse for the rest of us. And we're going to help you see that the system is so misogynistic and so manipulative, it has convinced you that you were doing a good job being a house slave. It has convinced you that you were doing a good job of being an Uncle Tom, when in actuality, the system is exploiting you in the same way it's exploiting us. But you are so unaware of that because your house slave mentality is blocking you from seeing that you're being used right now. So we're going to help you understand that. We're going to help you understand that if you were late on your mortgage payment for too many months, or your rent payment for too many months, your possession and property will be ascertained just like ours will. We're going to help you understand that. We're going to help you understand that, no offense, but you're probably 5 or 6 paychecks away from being on the street, whereas somebody like myself who doesn't have stable income or health insurance is 1 or 2 paychecks away. The only difference is that you just have a few more months to get yourself together than I do, but both of us will be shelterless, and this system does not care about taking care of shelterless people. We know that. We see that every single day when we leave our domiciles. We see that and we know that. Some of the people listening right now are shelterless and they understand how much of a problem this is. And we have done our best to continue to raise awareness about that. But so many of us are just more comfortable ignoring the fact that shelterless people exist that we don't even want to talk about it. And we think that our lives are so much different than theirs. But as I just pointed out, just allow yourself to not have income anymore and see what happens. Because Verizon and JP Mortgage and your apartment complex and maybe the credit union where you finance your car, if you stop giving them money, I guarantee you, you're going to see life very differently, very quickly. Because that's what capitalism is, you all. It's not a humane system. It doesn't care that you lost your job. It doesn't care that your sister's cancer came back again. It doesn't care that your dog just died of cancer. It doesn't care that you lost your job and you were diagnosed with sickle cell anemia. It doesn't care, you all. It doesn't care. It doesn't care. It doesn't care. You either put the money up and you make your consistent payments, or you will be on the street and everything that you don't currently own will be ascertained and taken, because that's the system we live in, where money is more important than people. But if we continue to join organizations that are working for justice, we can slow down and even prevent and terminate this system. Capitalism is already affected by all the work that organizations are doing, but we need more people power and we need less people protecting this system. We need more people understanding that this system is a joke and this system does not deserve to thrive. It does not deserve to live. It does not deserve to breathe. It does not deserve to have blood pumping through its veins. This is the most despicable system that we could ever consider protecting, which is why we should not protect it, because it does not deserve your protection. But the people do deserve your protection. The people do deserve for you to stand up for them, because they have stood up for you. And as I just pointed out, we come from our ancestors who made it very clear that they wanted our conditions to be better and different than theirs. They sacrificed for us, you all. They sacrificed for us. They allowed themselves to be mutilated for us. They allowed themselves to be discriminated against for us. And they fought back and they did everything they could because they wanted a better life for us, which means we have a responsibility. We can't just allow ourselves to be in a space because we got where we got, because we pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps. We have ancestors that literally took bullets for us. We have ancestors that were beaten so bad by whips that they had whelps on their back for years and years to come. We have children that were born onto slave plantations and never had a chance to understand that there was a life outside of slavery, because that was all they knew. And we have sisters who were raped. We have non-binary people who were raped and who were put up constantly because their bodies were to be used in numerous ways where we had no idea how to give them any type of support or respect, because it's not like you had therapy back in those days. Not to mention, after they would get raped by the master, then their African partner would rape them because their African partner didn't know how to deal with his anger, much like some of our brothers today who are still trying to work through that. So we have a lot of work that we need to unpack, you all. And you know what I'm going to say? The best way to do that is by joining an organization that's working for justice. The best way we can unpack colonization and decenter it and start to really understand it is by increasing our political education. And doing that means we're in an organization that is working for justice, where we can start to have these conversations, where we can start to talk about how religion, according to Eric Williams, who wrote Capitalism and Slavery, we can start to talk about how Williams made it clear that Christianity was not a system that was supposed to work for Africans who were enslaved. European oppressors literally felt like they were blessed to have slaves. They felt like God blessed them, you all, to have slaves. And they felt like slaves didn't deserve to celebrate Christianity. They didn't deserve to go to church because they were heathens. That's Eric Williams who said that. The only reason I know that is because I did my reading, because I'm in an organization that's working for justice, and I'm in an organization where it's increasing my political education. So I'm going to turn it back over to my dad, but you all, we have a serious responsibility because these brawls are going to keep happening. And don't get it twisted. We're talking about a brawl today, but just last week, there was an African child who was gunned down because the police officer went to the wrong person's house. So we still have police oppression. We still have rape. We still have murder. We still have homophobic kidnappings and other trans issues that are happening with our trans comrades. And so there is so much work that needs to be done. It is not even funny. And you have a responsibility, whether you accept that or not. Hopefully you're deciding that you need to join an organization because you shouldn't have to take on these issues by yourself. Ashe.
Ashe, thank you, Shakura, and just keeping it going. I want to delve a lot of what you said into exactly this incident that happened in Montgomery. Why this particular incident seemed to really inspire a lot of African people, right? People, I mean, it's been almost 3 weeks now since it happened, and people are still talking about it, still making memes about it, still joking about it. But underneath the joke, there is a real sentiment of pride that comes across. And so where is that coming from? Why does that exist? And I would argue that the reason why people feel inspired by what happened on that boat dock is because there are narratives, like Shakur mentioned, there are racist, white supremacist narratives that a lot of us believe because they've been institutionalized for 500 plus years. A lot of our people believe it. And one of those is that we can't get together as African people. We don't have capacity to get together. We can't support each other. That's a narrative. A lot of us believe that. There's no question. I don't care what people say now. A lot of us believe that it's not possible for us to get together as a people and support one another and build capacity to forge forward. And the proof that we don't believe that is in the fact so many of us are not engaged in our organized struggle because we don't think that it's a viable and feasible way for us to move forward. We really have convinced ourselves that the best we can do is whatever we figure out on an individual level. So I think the boat dock incident, it smashed that stereotype because it demonstrated that by any means necessary, our people will support each other, whether they know each other or not, whether they, knew what was happening or not. They can see that, yeah, these terrorists are attacking our people, and I need to play a role in coming to the aid of our people and defending us. So, for those of us engaged in this work, we know that our people are going to come together. But for a lot of folks, that was a real epiphany and eye-opener that, yes, we can come together and support one another. And that's a really positive thing. And then because contrary to what many of us want to believe, we live in a society that constantly disparages us. All of the so-called education, all of the information is designed to disparage and disrespect us. So if you don't have a process in place to combat that, and by process, I mean, you're not engaged in organized struggle, like in the APRP, we have work study. Every 2 weeks, we have to read, as Shakur mentioned, and discuss with the people in our circle. Everybody in the party, 3 continents in the Caribbean, participates in work study. So we have a strong mechanism to combat all of this backward reactionary propaganda the capitalist system beats us down with every day. But if you don't have a process like our work study process, not saying you have to be in our work study process, but if you don't have some kind of process like that, there's no way you can convince me that you are not being beaten down by their propaganda and that you don't believe it, what they're saying on some level. Oh, you people are never going to get together. You're the problem. Kwame Ture talked about any analysis about our people that doesn't include the enemy is fallacious. And that's true. But yeah, you hear that from us all the time. Well, the problem is that we don't have any fathers in the home. Not even that. You hear that everywhere. I just heard it this morning. And people saying that don't even have the mental capacity to think, well, why aren't our fathers in the house? Why isn't that happening? What has happened systemically to prevent that? Because there are many systemic things that have happened to prevent that. So, we don't have that capacity. So we just basically fall victim to whatever our enemies want us to believe. And we have a number of people in our movement history. These are just a few of them: Frantz Fanon, Steve Biko, Sekou Touré, Malcolm X, and many, 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 many others who discussed this psychology of oppression, who discussed, Carter G. Woodson talked about, if as African people, we don't have a strong sense of self, they don't have to tell us to go through the back door. We'll look for the back door ourselves. And I think that's largely where we are as a people, that we have to figure out ways to present more positive narratives to our people so that we can believe it. So it shouldn't have to be a boat dock fight that gets our people to understand that we can stand together. If we know our history, then we know that we always have stood together. So connecting our past to our present and our future, right? Like, how do we do that? As we were kidnapped throughout Africa and our people were facing overwhelming odds, we always fought back. As Shakur did a great job of articulating, we always fought back. And that's important to say, because there's one of those backward reactionary capitalist narratives that many of us still believe today, is that a large percentage of us did not fight back, and that we just suffered, Yassa boss, and we just went along with the master and didn't raise any resistance. A lot of us believe that most of our people took that path, and that it was only a small percentage of us that actually fought back against these people. A lot of us believe that. And then facing colonial oppression and slavery in the Middle Passage, Shakur gave the example of the meetings people took to plan the slave revolts. And there are many, many, many other examples like that. Women deciding to not resist the rapists so that they could save the children. That's fighting back. That's resistance, not giving in. They talked to each other and they said, they can take our bodies, but we can't let them take our spirit. That's resistance, you all. There are many different forms of resistance, and we fought back as best as we could, and we always have. We've always done that. And evidence of our resistance is the end of colonial occupation, the end of the chattel slave system, and the forcing of policy rights. So another false narrative is that, well, the reason why we got the end of colonialism and there was an African independence movement in Africa and the Caribbean is that the Europeans sat down with us and decided to grant us independence. That's not what happened. That's their narrative. That's what they want you to believe. What actually happened is our people fought back. We fought back on every level. In Azania, with the colonizers called South Africa, we had liberation movements that fought back. We had, at that time, the African National Congress was, at that time, a liberation movement. The Pan-Africanist Congress, which still exists today and is one of our sibling parties, liberation movement. AZAPO, as Shakur mentioned, liberation movement, Black consciousness movement. They were all liberation movements. They were fighting on the ground in Azania to run the apartheid regime into the ground. And their efforts are the primary reason why that ended up happening, because it gets to a point where it's untenable to continue to try to control with these constant uprisings happening. We talk about this happening in other places as well. The constant, C.R.R. James wrote the book Pan-African Slave Revolts, over 300 slave revolts. The primary reason why slavery was eradicated, not just here in the United Snakes of America, but also in Haiti, which is the most successful slave revolt that ended up being the revolution that created an independent Haiti. And they've been making them pay ever since 1804. In Jamaica, the same thing. In Cuba, the same thing. In Central America, all throughout Central America, the same thing. The fact that we have a population of Africans in Canada right now is because our people escaped slavery and went up there to Canada. And that's where the African, like a lot of the Africans in like the Nova Scotia region, for example, in Canada, you ask them, well, where are their families from? They'll tell you, well, Alabama, Louisiana. So resistance has always been what we have done. And the reason why I'm telling you all of these things and reiterating what Shakur said is because it's important for us to understand, like, what happened on the Montgomery boat dock is nothing new, even though the narrative is that it's new. It's something new and fresh, and we haven't really done that like that before. That's the narrative. But like Shakur said, we fight back all the time. It just doesn't make social media, it doesn't go viral on social media. I've been involved my whole life in efforts of us fighting back that don't make social media, but we're doing it. And so that's important because a lot of us unwittingly fall for the master's propaganda. You know, there's a lot of people now saying this, we are not our ancestors. And these people are trying to make an argument. Oh, we know that our people fought back. We're not saying they didn't fight back. We're just saying we're different than our ancestors. And I asked them, well, in what way? Like, how are you different from your ancestors? And they can't answer. And the reason why they can't is because we don't look at our reality through a class lens. We don't have a class analysis. We have a race analysis. Yeah, white people don't like us because we're African. We have that. Most of us have that. But we don't have a class analysis. We don't even know what that means to say class analysis. We don't understand when we're talking about, when we look at people past what they look like, what interests are they pursuing? That's a class analysis. What interests are they connecting themselves to, and what are they trying to fight for? That's a class analysis. Because if you analyze this from a class analysis, then you would know that we are not our ancestors is an absurd statement on any level. Because the truth is, we have always had Africans who resisted, as we've said. And we have always had Africans who were sellouts. Always. We had that, as Malcolm X told us in the message to the grassroots speech. He talked about the house Negro and the field Negro, right? And he said, you know, we have some house Negroes and field Negroes today. And he was absolutely correct. We had house slaves and field slaves 300 years ago, and we have that today. That's never been any different. It's undialectical to believe that, well, back in that day, most of us were house slaves, and today, most of us are field slaves. And you look at these people saying this stuff, well, you're not our ancestors. And I'll tell you, I was in a restaurant here a couple of weeks ago, and there was this African that sat down. It was an African soul food type restaurant, and they have outdoor seating. And I was outside, and two European men were talking, and the one was saying, you all, the planes are going down out of the sky because they're hiring all these minorities and they're not qualified. And that's why the trains are crashing and the planes are falling out the sky. And that's what he's saying. And this African said, well, I want to make a point. And the white man said, well, there's nothing you could say to change my mind. I'm not really interested in talking to you. And this African had on a shirt that said, we are not our ancestors. And I just jumped in and I said, look, dude, to the white boy, I said, look, dude, I'm enjoying my lunch. I don't want to hear your backward reactionary ideas. You can believe whatever you want. I don't give a damn what you believe, but I don't want to hear it. And I don't have to hear it. And so your choice, you can continue to talk like that. We're going to have a problem in here and you're not going to like it. It's up to you. Well, you should leave. I'm like, I ain't going nowhere. I'm through talking to you. You know, say one more thing like that, and you're going to have a very bad rest of your day. And then they got up and left, the two Europeans. And I looked at the African. I'm like, what does that shirt mean? He's like, well, we're not. I say, what you just did was classic Uncle Tomism. I'm sorry, but it is classic Uncle Tomism. What are you talking about? So it's important to have that class analysis, and then we won't say stupid things like we are not our ancestors. We've always had sellouts. We have them now. We've always had people that resisted oppression on all levels. We have that now. That's always been. That's a proper class analysis of our history. We've always had that. So it's insane to be sitting up talking about we're not our ancestors. That's so stupid. So when you see that, address it. Like, let's stop talking like that, and let's use our ancestors as inspiration, which is why they fought back the way they did, to provide that inspiration to us. Then people on that boat dock are nothing but the manifestations of our ancestors who did the exact same thing all the time. All the time they did the same thing. Now, there were some sellouts years ago in Montgomery who weren't doing that. Sure, there are some sellouts there on a couple of weeks ago in Montgomery who weren't fighting back. That's always going to be the case. So we have to understand this from a scientific analysis and not be, confused by sentimentality and all of these things. So the important takeaways, right? The important things to remember. What happened in Montgomery was cool, but if that really excites you, imagine what a sustained, organized resistance would do. Like, it's one thing to have some people spontaneously swim to the shore, grab chairs, start striking back at these, terrorists. And I don't want to hear nothing about that African man hitting that one. That woman, if you look at those videos, that behemoth or whatever the hell she was sucker punching all kind of people on that dock. She lucky she got off with being hit by a chair. When you have a brawl, maybe you've never been in a brawl. I've been in multiple brawls, and the rules go out the window, you all, when there's a brawl. If you don't want to get hit by a chair or shot or whatever, don't be in the brawl. That's just all there is to that. So I have zero sympathy for that terrorist. He should have knocked her damn head off with the damn chair. But my point is that if that spontaneous type of activity excites you, imagine what we would feel like if we could organize to have resistance on a mass level so that every time these people rose up to terrorize us, we had an organized response for them. Imagine that. If we did that, even if we did that, we increased our ability to do that by 10%. Right now, I would say our ability to do that is probably about 4 or 5% of our people everywhere, not just here in the United States. If we increased it to 14, 15%, it would create so much more capacity to the point where we would see conditions change for us. And what I mean by that is we would see these people act differently towards us, because what they believe is that we are not human. We have no value. We have no agency, and they can treat us and do to us whatever they want. And the minute we become organized and let them know there are consequences for messing with our people, then that'll stop to a large degree. I mean, obviously we're fighting against a system here. That's a whole different level. That's a different conversation. That's why we organize for revolution. That's a different conversation. But these types of terrorist attacks, we're saying, a lot of that will stop when people know, what I couldn't stop thinking about in regards to the boat dock situation is that when those Europeans jumped on that African, I know they saw like the steamboat out there had all the Africans on it. There's nothing but Africans in Montgomery, Alabama. It's a slave state. We live there. We're all over the place. I know we were all over that steamboat, but what the hell were they thinking that they could jump on this African and nothing would happen? That's what I'm saying. It's like this narrative is out there, and they were able to find out pretty quickly that it's a broke narrative. And that's the beauty of that incident. But we have to go beyond that. We can't stay there. We have to go beyond that and start talking about what if we organized ourselves so that we could defend ourselves all the time, not just one instance here or one instance there, but we could defend ourselves all the time when these things happen. And that's what I'm trying to say, not trying, that's exactly what I'm saying in my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. How do we organize ourselves in local areas to respond to these terrorists in a way that holds them accountable? So that's the question we have to ask ourselves. And the only way to have an organized resistance is through people becoming organized. We can't expect us to rise up and give a response to these people when everybody's doing their own individualistic thing and when none of us are on the same page. We have to be organized. And that's why I was listening to a show yesterday on XM radio. I was driving to the Bay Area, and this African was on there, and he was talking, that if you want to hear anything of any substance on stations like that, you have to listen like early Saturday morning or Sunday morning when nobody's listening. During the prime time hour, there are people on there talking a bunch of idiocy. But this particular time, this guy's, he's making a very good point. He's arguing that we have the opportunity as a people to see these things happening as a way for us to get organized, and that's what we needed to do, not just vote for politicians in office with no organization to hold them accountable to our interests. And he's 100% correct. But we have to organize ourselves on a grassroots level and build across these colonial borders and have capacity to fight back on all levels. And that's how we begin to change the conditions that our people have. So it's important to think of that in the context of, like, for yourself, what do you want to do? How do you leave this program today and say, what kind of contribution I want to make? And I've said this before, and I'll continue to say it. You don't have to, the AAPRP, our political education program is intense. It's very intense. And most of you you're not going to be able to deal with that right now. We get that. And we don't want to deal with you not being able to deal with it. Okay. Because that's just like a cluster, what. So, but you can engage in some level of political education. Now, if you want to join ours, we welcome you. Absolutely. You just have to know you're going to have to work. It's not going to be easy. But maybe you're like, well, I can't do that right now. I want to build up to that. There's nothing wrong with that. So maybe you start with a series of articles that talk about what's happening in the Sahel region in Africa, Niger, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Senegal. What's happening there? What is that about? What is that? What's the history of that? What role did the North Atlantic Treaty Organization play in destabilizing Libya under the Obama regime in 2011? Learning about that beyond what they tell you on CNN and CIA, learning about everything, developing a critical lens in how you look at stuff. You can do that by just reading an article and getting 2 or 3 people together, and every 2 weeks having a 30-minute discussion about the article. You don't have to start where we are with our political education program, but that's what's going to be required. And that's why I mentioned the guy on XM, because a caller asked him, what do we need to do? And he talked about the Black Panther Party and how they made an attempt to have a study process, and that's what we need to do is have organized study. And he was absolutely correct. That is exactly what we need to do. We need to have organized study and get away from, create an environment and a culture where these individualistic, idealistic opinions, that's not acceptable. I mean, it's a real problem that you can be talking to people today and you could have done all the research on something and they don't even have to, they'll question you and they can't even articulate a logical question for what you're explaining about the situation. And yet they can, well, I don't believe it. I mean, that's a sad reality that we're in, and we have to step up our game and create a better cultural reality where we're all accountable to each other. That screams of a lack of accountability. People cannot know a damn thing and feel totally comfortable saying, yeah, I don't know. I don't have to talk about it. I don't agree with you. Yeah, you don't agree because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. We have to create a reality where people don't even feel comfortable talking like that in public. And that means that's not censoring anybody. It's just saying, like, you want to have an opinion, you got to do the work. You got to do the work. You got to be accountable. Nobody wants to just hear you talk just because you have vocal cords. So that's what we're saying when we say that level of political education has to happen on a consistent basis. And it can happen on a low level, 30 minutes every 2 weeks. That's an hour a month. That's nothing, you all. But it's more than what most of us are doing now. And that little bit will help us gain such a greater understanding of what's happening in the world, and will help us prepare for how we can do things to address what's happening in the world. And then, why do instances like Montgomery point us towards the necessity for organization? Because what that incident shows us is, like Shakura was saying, these people are absolute terrorists, and they feel like they're losing something because capitalism is in a severe state of decline. Capitalism used to, back 50 years ago, you could have a job at the post office, put 2 kids through school, buy a house, buy a car, do all that, and have money for vacations. Now, none of that is possible. You got to have 5 or 6 people living with you that you don't even want to live with, and still can't make the bills. If people's pay has not kept up with inflation. These capitalist corporations, CEOs back in 1970 made $45 for every dollar that you and I made. Today, they make almost $400 for every dollar you and I make. This is the reality that we are faced with today. And as a result of that, these Europeans, the capitalist system cannot meet their needs like it used to. And what the system is doing, it's not going to tell them, well, we can't meet your needs. It's telling them, well, the reason why we can't meet it is because of the African people, the indigenous people, the immigrants. And so they're taking out their frustrations on us. And like Shakur said, it's only going to intensify. And we have to be organized and ready to address that. If these people attack you, it may not be in front of 300 people on a steamboat. It might be on a quiet, darkened street. Most likely, it'll be on a quiet, darkened street. And if they do that, and your only course of protection is to call 911, I truly feel sorry for you. I truly feel sorry for you, because that is not going to end well for you. So the point is, take the Montgomery boat dock incident as a signal that it's time for us to get organized, you all. It's time for us to get organized and make what happened on that boat dock a regular occurrence. So we want to thank you for joining us. We want to invite you back next week, August 27th, my dear departed dad's birthday. And we're going to be talking about the legacy of the Garvey movement. There's a lot of talk about the Garvey movement, and people are like, well, Garvey was a capitalist, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we understand that. But the reality is that nobody who is fighting for African liberation today has not been touched by the Garvey movement in a positive way. Everything is dialectical. Nothing is all good. Nothing is all bad. So we want to talk about the legacy of the Garvey movement from a dialectical perspective. I want to invite you to go to APRP Forward Ever shop there. The link is there. We have clothes, African, One Unified Socialist Africa. You should really support Revolutionary Pan-African Organization. We're fighting for our people, and we need your support. So go to aprp-intl.org, and you should join the All African People's Revolutionary Party if you don't have an organization. And if you don't want to join the APRP, you should join some other organization or start your own. But you have a responsibility to do that. abetterworld.me is a great source for all of these videos if you want to go back or point people to them. And Hood Communist is an outstanding revolutionary literature site giving revolutionary Pan-African perspectives on a weekly basis. New articles out every Thursday. And we have a number of programs there. You can see on the bottom, if you're looking at the screen, Pontula, Revolutionary African Women, Forward Ever, APRP, weekly newscast, and of course this one. We encourage you to participate and support all of them. Bring some people with you, tell people about it. That's really wonderful. And my book, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, the need for this book is more now than it ever has been. We have got to get organized if we want to maintain safety for our communities and our people. And by communities, I mean all peace and justice loving people. So get the book. It's only $8, only $5 if you read it digitally. And all proceeds are used for supporting our Antifa type work and other work that we're doing. So we appreciate each and every one of you. We want to invite you, or I'm sorry, ask you to please have a great rest of your Sunday evening. We hope that you are well. Stay strong. We are winning. Don't let these people discourage you. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. The problem is this backward capitalist imperialist system, and we're going to destroy it and build something better. One unified socialist Africa and societies all across the world that represent people's interests over profit. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your evening. Forward ever, backwards never.